thank you for the invitation to be a part of your year-long chapel series around the topic of present truth. And the doctrine they assigned to me was one of my favorites, stewardship. Now, we're going to start with a pop quiz, and you can just share the answer with the person next to you. You're going to do better if you stayed awake in Psychology 101 when your professor talked about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You remember that? Question number 1. Turn to the person next to you, share the answer. What did Maslow put at the base of his triangle? Go ahead and share your answer. And we will grade as we go. The answer is food, air, physiological needs, those things that we have to have in order to survive. How many got it right? Very good. Question number 2. What's next in his hierarchy of needs? Go ahead, share the answer. Security, safety. We need to feel safe and not threatened. How many got that one right? Okay, and then he builds our hierarchy of needs and talks about our need to love and to be loved, our need for self-esteem, and so on. Question number 3, last one. What did he put at the pinnacle of his pyramid? Go ahead and share the answer. I'm hearing the right answer. It is self-actualization. How many of you aced the quiz? Very good. Okay, well, we're going to talk a little bit today about the self-actualization of stewardship, if you will, build our own triangle and explore together the motivations that we have for giving of our talents, of our time, of our treasures, the things that we value most in life. Begins at the base with what we'll label self-interest. In other words, we derive some benefit from living generous lives, and so at this very base level, we give just because we get something back. My very first assignment, getting out of seminary here, the conference president informed me, we have decided to let you start your own church from scratch. I begged him, please don't make me do that. I followed up with threatening emails and nasty phone messages. I still remember his response. He said, Karl, I feel so honored that you would feel safe enough with me to share your true feelings. Now, go start the church. My very first week, no kidding, I was preaching to the congregation, which consisted of my wife and one other couple. In the middle of my sermon, the couple got up explaining, look, we told some friends we were going to meet them to go hiking up in the mountains. We like your sermon, but we got to go, which left me preaching alone to my wife, which is never a good idea. Well, that little church really struggled, especially financially, because we were all just a ragtag group of kids just out of college, and we didn't realize how much money it takes to keep a church alive and working. I remember one board meeting where, once again, we were talking about the challenges of finances when my friend Dean said, time out, hold on. Karl, how much do we need in order to keep our doors open? Like, what's our basic need every week? And I said, well, it's about $1,000 to pay rent and to do ministries and so on, about $1,000 a week. He said, okay, how many people are coming to church? So I average about 50 people or so. Okay, here's what we do. We divided 50 into 1,000. He said, we're going to charge everybody $20 to come to church. Well, this is the idea of a country club. If you're going to play, you got to pay, right? Well, I'm happy to tell you the motion died for lack of second. We actually never did that, but you can understand the motive is quite simple. It's self-interest. Look, people derive benefit from this community of faith, and so they ought to be willing to give. But as we mature in our faith, we come to the next level, which is simply obedience. Malachi 3:10 says very clearly, bring all of the tithes into the storehouse. The Bible commands us to give. So, as we mature in faith, we say, I just want to be obedient to what God tells me to do, and so we obey simply because that's what we're supposed to do, right? We give out of a sense of obedience. A very fascinating study out of Cornell University, where they discovered that different parts of the brain fire up depending on your motive for giving. So in other words, they looked at people who were giving out of a sense of obedience, simply because that's the rule and so they give, versus those who give because there's just a joy in living a generous life. People who give much more altruistically, a different part of their brain lights up when they're in the act of giving. An excerpt from that study. These brain studies show this profound sense of joy and delight that comes from giving to others. It doesn't come from any dry action where the act is out of a sense of duty in the narrowest sense, or the act is just in response to obedience, like writing a check for a good cause. It comes from working to cultivate a generous quality, from interacting with people. There is the smile, the tone of the voice, the touch on the shoulder. We're talking here about altruistic love. And people who gave altruistically had, get this just blows me away. People who gave altruistically, when that part of their brain was fired up, people who gave altruistically had a 44% reduction in early death when compared to those who simply gave out of a sense of duty and obedience. Isn't that interesting? So we grow in our motivations of giving. Starts with just pure self-interest, grows to obedience, then we come to what I will label biblical understanding. This is where we say, look, we want to live present truth. We want to be sincere followers of Jesus. Therefore, because we have in the Bible the teachings of Jesus, we just want to follow what Jesus taught relative to stewardship. So, present truth is nothing more than being present with the one who says, I am the truth. That's what present truth is, living in the presence of Jesus. So, as we grow in our walk with Christ, we come to this level where we say, I just want to follow what Jesus teaches on this topic. What did he teach? Well, one of several passages that we could look at, perhaps the most well-known, comes out of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Jesus says, do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And it is such an insightful, profound teaching that wherever your treasure is, that's where your heart is going to go. A lot of times we think of it just the opposite. Wherever my heart is, then that's where the things I treasure most in life, money, time, talent, and so on, that's where that will go. No, that's not what Jesus said. When we are intentional about following the teachings of Jesus, wherever we put our treasure, the heart just naturally goes there. You don't believe this? Invest in some stock. And you'll find yourself most every morning wanting to check, what did it do? Did it go up? Did it go down? Wherever you put your treasure, that's where your interest is. That's what grabs your heart. So I wonder, what do you treasure? Robert Fulghum talks about the time his 7-year-old daughter Molly gave him a sack of what she treasured most in life. It had all kinds of things in it: a tiny seashell, used lipstick, 2 ribbons, 3 stones, a plastic dinosaur, and so on. She said, I want you to take my treasures to work with you today. And so Robert Fulghum did just that. He thought that it was cute, didn't think much about it, tossed it in the trash can. When he came home that night, Molly asked, well, Where's my sack of treasures? Oh, he said, it's at the office. Well, you didn't throw them away, did you? Oh, no, he lied. Fulgham writes, Molly had given me her treasures, all that a 7-year-old held dear. Love in a paper sack, and I just missed it. I had thrown it away. Nothing in there that I needed. It wasn't the first or the last time that I felt like my daddy permit had expired. I went back to my office, dumped all the wastebaskets out on the desk. The janitor came by and asked, did you lose something? Yeah, my mind. Well, it's probably in there somewhere. I'll help you look for it. So they searched all through the trash, went out and did some dumpster diving until finally they found Molly's sack of treasures. Fulgham writes, to my surprise, Molly gave me the bag once again several days later. Same ratty bag, same stuff inside. I felt forgiven. Over several months, the bag went with me from time to time. It was never clear to me why I did or did not get it on a certain day. I began to think of it as the daddy prize. And I tried to be good the night before so that I would be trusted with it the next morning. In time, Molly turned her attention to other things, lost interest in the game, grew up. Me, well, I was left holding the bag. She gave it to me one morning and never asked for it back. It still sits in my office, left over from when a child said, here, it's the best I got. Take it. What I treasure most, it's yours. Such as I have, I give to thee. I missed it the first time, but it's my bag now. You treasure. Jesus says that wherever you put your treasure, your heart will be there. See, that's the real issue. When you get to the teaching of Jesus, he's not interested in the treasure itself. He's not interested in the size of your gift, but rather the heart of the giver. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. And that's what Jesus wants. He wants your heart. Some years ago, Black Friday, I went to get my hair cut, walked into the barber shop and met this kid, I guess to be, 4 or 5 years old, bossy little kid. As soon as I walked in, he commanded, you, sir, sit right there. Well, it was the only empty seat in the place, and so that's where I was going to sit anyway. And then the whole time as I was waiting, because it was packed, we listened to this kid entertaining everybody. He could not stop talking. I'm going to a Seahawks game this Sunday. I love football. Do you like the Seahawks? I love the Seahawks. We had turkey yesterday for dinner. Did you have turkey? I love turkey. I go to this preschool and this and that. I just kept talking. Finally, it was his turn to get up, and the lady cut his hair, and he just glowed when she finished. Wow, he looked at himself in the mirror. I've never looked so good in my whole life. Great job, he said. He bounces off the chair and races out the door. Then, a few minutes later, he comes racing back in and says, I forgot, I'm so sorry, says to the lady. In one hand, he had the lollipop that she had given him. In the other hand, he opened up his fist, and there he gave her a nickel, a sticky, slobber-covered nickel. He said, I forgot your tip. Then he says, here, go have fun with it. Like just, go crazy. Take your family to Disneyland. It's on me, my nickel. Go ahead, have fun, go crazy. Well, by this point, I was sitting in the chair, and the lady was cutting my hair. I said to her, cute kid, wasn't he? And she said, oh my, he was so cute. Then she said, gave me my biggest tip of the day. Really? Busiest day of the year, Black Friday? And the biggest tip she gets is 5 cents? Are you kidding me? Well, of course, I knew what she was saying. It's not the size of the gift, it's the heart of the giver. That's why, indeed, it was her biggest tip of the day. And so as we grow closer to Christ, we grow in the motivation of why we give. The next level, I simply label gratitude. As we live in the shadow of the cross, in the presence of the one who says, I am the truth, we become undone with the sacrifice that he made. And so we ask the question of the psalmist, who simply cries out, what can I give back to God for all that he has given to me? It's just a natural response. When we understand what Christ has done for us, the most natural thing in the world is to want to just give him back something. What can I give for all that he has given to me? I like the way Milo Kaufman puts it. Christian stewardship most certainly is not church legislation or a scheme to deprive people of their cash. It is the natural consequence of an experience with God, the natural reaction of the human heart that has been touched by the divine Spirit. It's just a natural thing when you're thankful that you want to give of what you treasure most, your time, your money, whatever. Just out of a sense of gratitude. And the first time I ever got to go down to Australia, I figured I'd never get back, so I didn't want to miss the opportunity to check something off my bucket list, and that is to go snorkeling on the Great Barrier Reef. Well, as it turned out, the one day that I could do this, I flew up to Cairns, and it was a miserable day. It was raining and windy and very, very just rough seas. And I didn't realize this, but it actually takes you a couple of hours to get from Cairns at the port there out to the reef. And so we're tossing and going up and down in this boat to go out to the reef, and most of the people on the boat are getting sick, and finally we get there. We get anchored, but again, they can't bring you right to the reef. They anchor you a bit a ways, and then they gave us some instructions, saying, now you're going to have to partner up with somebody, get a buddy, and then make sure that you stay together as you swim out to the reef, and it's just over there. So I turned to the gentleman next to me. I'd never met him before. He was from San Francisco. I said, would you like to partner up with me? He said, yeah, it'd be great. I'm by myself. You're by yourself. Super. So we jump in and we start swimming, but again, there's high waves, and it's just, it's rough water. We get out to the reef. No sooner do I look down and see the Great Barrier Reef, and my buddy starts panicking. I'm drowning, he says. I'm drowning. Help. Well, I don't want to be melodramatic about this because the guy's wearing a life vest. So I don't know that you can really drown wearing a life vest, but he kept insisting, I'm drowning. And I tried to explain to him out there, you can't drown. You're wearing a life vest, which mercy was never like my spiritual gift. And he said, no, I'm seriously drowning. Then he'd go under. And then I thought, well, people drown in a bathtub. Maybe he could drown with a life vest. Now I took WSI when I was in college, and so the only thing I remember from my life-saving classes is that you never want to approach somebody who's drowning because they'll just pull you under and then you'll both drown. So that's not good. So that's the only thing I could remember. But I'm kind of down here on my life-saving skills, self-interest. But he just keeps yelling at me, and the lifeguards on the boat that brought us out there, they're way out of hearing range, and they don't see what's going on. Nobody's around us, and he just keeps insisting, I'm drowning, help me. And then he'd go under, and he'd come up coughing and sputtering, and now I'm really worried for this guy. And I didn't know what to do. And finally I said, okay, so time out. So, as he's coming up for air, I tried to get this in. Look, I'll come up behind you, and I will grab you, and I'll take you in. But if you touch me, I'm going to leave you, and you're going to drown. He said, oh, help me, I'm fine. I said, don't touch me. Don't touch me. He said, oh, help. Okay, all right. So, I come up behind him, and I kind of get him in a neck hold, and he's flailing around. Don't touch me. Don't touch. And so I start slowly kind of swimming toward the boat, and we get about halfway there, and then a couple of the lifeguards on the boat saw what was happening, and they threw out a little raft, and they took him in, and that's the last I saw of him until that afternoon when we were going back. We happened into each other on the deck, and as soon as he saw me, that's the guy, to everybody within earshot. That's the guy right there, pointing right at me. That's the guy that saved my life. I was just telling him, that's him. You are a hero. You saved my life. I said, well, you were wearing a life jacket. As much as I wanted to take credit for this, he said, no, I was drowning. You saved my life. And he's like on his knees doing this thing. And I'm saying, that's not necessary here. He said, look. And then he gives me this big hug. I'm German. I don't hug guys, stranger guys. And I'm saying, this is so unnecessary. No, you saved my life. And he said, look, as soon as we get back to Cairns, I'm taking you out to my favorite restaurant. It's an all-you-can-eat lobster buffet. And I said, well, I don't eat lobster. He said, oh, well, fine. I'll take you to my favorite bar, and you can have all the drinks you want. And I said, I don't drink, but you're looking at me like, what's he going to do with that? I'm a pastor. I don't drink. I said, I don't drink. And then he pulls out his wallet and says, yeah, well, let me just give you something because you saved my life. I said, well, you don't have to give me, how much are you thinking? No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. It's just a natural reaction. What can I give to you when you realize God really has saved your life for eternity? How do we respond? Well, the closer we come to Christ, the more we want to live out of this profound sense of gratitude. How can I give back for all that you have given to me? And then we come to the pinnacle of our pyramid, which in a word is simply love. Why do we give? Because that's what love does. I think of the woman who was just so undone by God's love. How Jesus had just radically changed her life and the difference he made in her life. And so one time she comes uninvited, barges into this dinner party. Then she opens up this flask of really, really expensive perfume. When she ordered this on the internet, it didn't get delivered by UPS or Federal Express. No, it came in a Brinks Security armored guard truck. That's how expensive this perfume was. And she just loses her senses. This is so, out of the box. She just opens it up and she pours it all over his feet. And tearfully, she just confesses, oh, you have changed my life. And I can imagine the next day, some of her friends cornered her to say, what were you thinking? That was so rude and awkward. And the perfume, why would you waste all that money? And I suspect maybe her response came, well, look, I don't think you'd ever understand. If you had any idea how screwed up my life was before him, and what a difference he's made. I don't expect you to understand, but the best I can tell you is, love. Love made me do it. You see, in the end, stewardship is not about giving money. It's all about falling in love with Jesus. When we live in the presence of the one who says, I am the truth, then we live in the shadow of the cross as we behold his ultimate sacrifice. Then we live sacrificially. We love extravagantly. And we give cheerfully. We are so grateful, O God, for the sacrifice you made on our behalf. For the cross, we are grateful. And now, God, I just pray that we would be the kind of community of faith that would discover the joy of living in your kingdom that's marked by this generous, sacrificing heart. That when people would look at those of us in this community of faith, they would shake their heads and say, no, who lives like that? And why would they live so selflessly and so generously and so cheerfully? God, I want to be that kind of a person. And I pray the same for each person gathered here today, that we would love, that we would give, that we would sacrifice, just like Jesus. In his name we pray.